I saw something in the Times today. I think the headline was something about fear of crime is driving a lot of Republican voters to the polls or making people vote Republican. Fear of crime. And I just about choked on my River Moon coffee this morning when I read that, because Jesus fucking Christ, if there has ever been a more criminal administration in the history of this country, somebody please send me an email and tell me which one it is, if not the Orange Vomit, Donald Jesus Trump and the rest of his gang of outlaws. You know, there was a time, maybe you remember this, I know over the years that I've been a parent, which has been an awful lot of years, one of the things I tried to instill in my kids is the absolute necessity of being two things: being honest and obeying the law. And that second one always came with a corollary, which was, if you don't like the law or you feel the law is repressive or outrageous, then work through our system to change it. But I've tried to teach them the absolute necessity of honesty. So here we have an election coming up in 3 days, where almost every candidate running for election or re-election who is running under the so-called Republican Party banner is a fucking liar or a deceiver, someone who cannot and will not be dishonest or honest, and someone who is hell-bent on destroying this republic. And then we wonder where crime comes from. Again, when I was a kid, we were taught that people in positions of power were obligated. It came with being in a position of power, obligated to lead by example. I don't know how old you are, but think back over the various administrations that we have had in this country. You have to go back quite a ways until you find one who really was leading for the most part, and I put the caveat in there deliberately, who was leading for the most part in an honest way, in a lawful way. If the Orange Vomit has done anything, he has shown an entire generation of people that you can be a lying, deceiving, law-breaking fuckwad and get away with it over and over again. Now, what did I hear yesterday, this rancid bastard has announced that he's going to run for the presidency again. It's pretty astonishing that you have a party that still claims to be Republican, which it is not, that bills itself as a party of law and order. They're not about law and order. They're about Christian terrorism and fascism. They're about beating people down. They're about stomping on people. Like Orwell said I guess it was O'Brien, one of the characters in 1984, who was trying to tell Winston Smith that if he wanted to envision a picture of the future, it would be a boot on the average person's neck. We saw that in Minneapolis, didn't we? The Times went on talking about the fear of crime is especially of interest to Republicans. Christian terrorists. You know, people who don't realize that they've become Christian terrorists, or the leadership of their party has at least. And these Republican candidates, I don't care whether they're running for election or re-election, they're trying to blame Democrats for crime problems, when the most criminal fuck ever to occupy the Oval Office is Donald Trump, who occupied the Oval Office for 4 years and wants to do it another 4, or endlessly. Let me give you a couple examples from the Times article. Here's a 49-year-old nurse in Bucks County, PA. She's been begging her elderly parents to move out of Philly because a delivery driver was shot and killed last month a few blocks from their home. All right, that's a tragedy. It really is for the family of that delivery driver. But to blame that on Democrats? Here's another one. Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. Here's a woman who already knows, according to Times, what she wants for Christmas this year. You know what she wants? One of those Ring doorbell cameras, which she hopes will lessen her terrible fears of break-ins in her suburban town near Milwaukee. And the Republicans, the Christian terrorists, have convinced this woman that it's Joe Biden's fault. And this woman says that her main motivating issues in this year's election are crime, security, safety. Well, I would suggest to this woman, if I could talk to her, which I can't, that then she should be actively working to eliminate Ron Johnson from his Senate seat in Wisconsin. He is a traitorous, law-breaking fuck that she's going to vote for again, this woman who wants to have a Ring doorbell camera because she's afraid maybe there'll be a break-in in her town near Milwaukee. I wonder if she is aware of the absolute giving the middle finger to the Constitution, to local laws, to federal laws, to constitutional laws that the Christian terrorist leadership is doing on a constant basis. I wonder if this woman who wants the Ring camera is aware of that. Or is she saturated in what I identified years ago as willful ignorance? Now, the polls are showing, and Biden is getting his ass kicked over this. Biden talks about the biggest threat right now is to American democracy as a whole because of these Christian terrorists, or he doesn't call them that, but I will. But polls show that that's not the voters' biggest concern. The biggest concerns about the economy and inflation that I swear to you, Democrats have not a goddamn thing to do with. Look, we had 2 years of pent-up desire on the part of us, consumers, to go buy shit, to spend money. Oh, God, that's one of the defining characteristics of an American. Spend, buy shit that you don't need, that's going to fall apart within 2 or 3 years. Buy, 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 buy. So we had 2 years of that pent-up demand, and then it was released when Biden or the CDC or whoever said, okay, we're an open country again. So everybody rushed to the fucking junk stores to buy all this crap. Well, what happened next? Supply shortages? Well, the supply chain is down. We can't get people, nobody to work. Which was true. But the Democrats had nothing to do with that. And then all of a sudden, with all this demand, what happens in a capitalist system when demand goes up and supply goes down? Right. Prices go up. That's how capitalism works. Fuck the consumer. Gouge her. Break his ass. Get everything you can. So that's what happened. That's not the Democrats' fault. That is the fault of capitalism, who doesn't give a fuck if you live or die. And if you're not buying things, please die. So inflation. The polls show that voters' biggest concerns are about the economy and inflation. So they're going to vote for the party of the beast, Donald Jesus Trump, that was partly responsible for this. How so, Mr. Malloy? Well, if you remember, if you can, the beginning of the pandemic, when this rotten orange fucker stood on television with these unconscious leaders around him saying, well, it'll be over in April when warm weather comes. Well, we've only got 3 cases. Well, don't worry about it. I'm not wearing a mask. And then telling everybody in his administration, don't wear a mask around me. The way he completely, Trump, the orange vomit, completely mishandled the pandemic is partly responsible, if not mainly responsible, for where we are now. So now, in addition to that, there's the worry about crime and disorder. Well, crime and disorder happens when you have a huge chunk of the population that is being oppressed, suppressed, denied rights. Oh, I know there are hundreds of thousands of jobs going begging right now. Ooh, well, that should solve everything, right? Well, why isn't it then? So the Christian terrorist voters are just wetting their pants over crime and disorder. Even though national crime trends, the numbers, are mixed. There's some areas where crime is up, mostly property crimes, and crimes where the numbers are down, assault, rape, in some places murder. And for a lot of people, and I have to say it, mostly white people, the anxieties that the Christian terrorists have ginned up in these people comes from seeing homeless encampments, or finding a syringe on the sidewalk, or seeing somebody squatting, relieving himself or herself on a sidewalk, or reading accounts in their neighborhood social networks of somebody had their bicycle stolen. I'm not minimizing that shit. But when you have a president and an entire fucking cabinet and an entire administration like we did for 4 years under the orange vomit that is centered on crime, lying, deception, deceit, how do you inculcate in the people in this country a sense, we've got to live an honest life. We've got to be honest with each other. We've got to not commit crime. You can't do it. It's impossible. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.